Language Foundations Vocabulary Flashcards, helping you achieve understanding.
Utter a sudden loud cry. Utter aloud, often with surprise, horror, or joy. Shed tears because of sadness, rage, or pain. A slogan used to rally support for a cause. A cry to arms. A loud utterance of emotion, especially when inarticulate. A cry of rage. A loud utterance, often in protest or opposition. Proclaim or announce in public. Before we had newspapers, a town crier would cry the news. A fit of weeping. Had a good cry. Bring into a particular state by crying. Demand immediate action. This situation is crying for attention. The characteristic utterance of an animal. Utter a characteristic sound. The cat was crying. Assign a specified, usually proper name to. Make a prediction about. Tell in advance. Order, request, or command to come. She was called into the director's office. Utter a sudden loud cry. Pay a brief visit. The mayor likes to call on some of the prominent citizens. The option to buy a given stock, or stock index or commodity future, at a given price before a given date. A demand by a broker that a customer deposit enough to bring his margin up to the minimum requirement. A demand especially in the phrase. The call of duty. A telephone connection. She reported several anonymous calls. A loud utterance, often in protest or opposition. Greet, as with a prescribed form, title, or name. She calls him by first name. Demand payment of a loan. Give the calls to the dancers for a square dance. Get or try to get into communication with someone by telephone. I tried to call you all night. The characteristic sound produced by a bird. Make a demand, as for a card or a suit or a show of hands. He called his trump. A brief social visit. Senior professors' wives no longer make afternoon calls on newcomers. A demand for a show of hands in a card game. After 2 raises there was a call. An instruction that interrupts the program being executed. Pascal performs calls by simply giving the name of the routine to be executed. A request. Many calls for Christmas stories. Ascribe a quality to or give a name of a common noun that reflects a quality. He called me a bastard. A special disposition, as if from a divine source, to pursue a particular course. A visit in an official or professional capacity. The pastor's calls on his parishioners. Call a meeting. Invite or command to meet. The 1C conference was called to discuss the final solution. Challenge somebody to make good on a statement, charge with or censure for an offense. He deserves to be called on that. Challenge the sincerity or truthfulness of. Call the speaker on a question of fact. Consider or regard as being. I would not call her beautiful. Declare in the capacity of an umpire or referee. Call a runner out. indicate a decision in regard to. Call balls and strikes behind the plate. Lure by imitating the characteristic call of an animal. Make a stop in a harbor. The ship will call in Honolulu tomorrow. Order or request or give a command for. The unions called a general strike for Sunday. Order, summon, or request for a specific duty or activity, work, role. He was already called 4 times for jury duty. Read aloud to check for omissions or absentees. Require the presentation of for redemption before maturation. Rouse somebody from sleep with a call. I was called at 5 a.m. this morning. Send a message or attempt to reach someone by radio, phone, etc. Make a signal in order to transmit a message. Hawaii is calling. Sports, the decision made by an umpire or referee. He was ejected for protesting the call. Stop or postpone because of adverse conditions, such as bad weather. Call a football game. Utter a characteristic note or cry. Blue jays called to one another. Utter in a loud voice or announce. He called my name. Utter a sudden loud cry. A small valley between mountains. Complain. What was he hollering about? A very loud utterance, like the sound of an animal. Shout out. He hollered out to surrender our weapons. Utter a sudden loud cry. A very loud utterance, like the sound of an animal. Cry hollow. Encourage somebody by crying hollow. A joke that seems extremely funny. Utter a sudden loud cry. Sharp piercing cry. Her screaming attracted the neighbors. A high-pitched noise resembling a human cry. He heard the scream of the brakes. Utter or declare in a very loud voice. Make a loud, piercing sound. Fighter planes are screaming through the skies. Utter a sudden loud cry. Utter aloud, often with surprise, horror, or joy. I'm here, the mother shouted when she saw her child looking lost. Use foul or abusive language towards. The angry mother shouted at the teacher. A loud utterance, often in protest or opposition. Utter in a loud voice. Talk in a loud voice, usually denoting characteristic manner of speaking. My grandmother is hard of hearing, you'll have to shout. Utter a sudden loud cry. Utter in a very loud voice. Utter a sudden loud cry. Make high-pitched, whiny noises. Blow in a squall. When it squalls, a prudent sailor reefs his sails. Sudden violent winds, often accompanied by precipitation. Utter a sudden loud cry. I yelled to her from the window but she couldn't hear me. Utter or declare in a very loud voice. You don't have to yell. I can hear you just fine. A loud utterance of emotion, especially when inarticulate. A yell of pain. A loud utterance, often in protest or opposition. Utter aloud, often with surprise, horror, or joy. Call out loudly, as of names or numbers. Challenge to a duel. Utter aloud, often with surprise, horror, or joy. Utter aloud, often with surprise, horror, or joy. I won, he exclaimed. State or announce. I am not a communist, he exclaimed. Utter aloud, often with surprise, horror, or joy. Shout louder than. A loud utterance, often in protest or opposition. Shed tears because of sadness, rage, or pain. A yell intended to rally a group of soldiers in battle. A slogan used to rally support for a cause. A yell intended to rally a group of soldiers in battle. A slogan used to rally support for a cause. A yell intended to rally a group of soldiers in battle. A slogan used to rally support for a cause. A slogan used to rally support for a cause. Our watchword will be, democracy. A secret word or phrase known only to a restricted group. A loud utterance, often in protest or opposition. Proclaim or announce in public. Without qualification. Used informally as, often pejorative, intensifiers. Utter nonsense. Articulate. Either verbally or with a cry, shout, or noise. He uttered a curse. Complete and absolute. Utter seriousness. Express in speech. Express audibly. Utter sounds, not necessarily words. He uttered strange sounds that nobody could understand. Put into circulation. Utter counterfeit currency. Turn loose or free from restraint. Let loose minds. Express audibly. Utter sounds, not necessarily words. Make known to the public information that was previously known only to a few people or that was meant to be kept a secret. Make clothes larger. Bring out of a specific state. Express audibly. Utter sounds, not necessarily words. She let out a big heavy sigh. Expel gases or odors. Express audibly. Utter sounds, not necessarily words. Give off, send forth, or discharge, as of light, heat, or radiation, vapor, etc. The ozone layer blocks some harmful rays which the sun emits. Obtain from a substance, as by mechanical action. Italians express coffee rather than filter it. Indicate through a symbol, formula, etc. Can you express this distance in kilometers? Articulate. Either verbally or with a cry, shout, or noise. She expressed her anger. Serve as a means for expressing something. Mail that is distributed by a rapid and efficient system. Rapid transport of goods. Public transport consisting of a fast train or bus that makes only a few scheduled stops. He caught the express to New York. Give expression to. Manifest the effects of a gene or genetic trait. Many of the laboratory animals express the trait. Not tacit or implied. Her express wish. Send by rapid transport or special messenger service. She expressed the letter to Florida. without unnecessary stops. An express train. Articulate, either verbally or with a cry, shout, or noise. Express in speech. This depressed patient does not verbalize. Be verbose. This lawyer verbalizes and is rather tedious. Convert into a verb. Many English nouns have become verbalized. Articulate, either verbally or with a cry, shout, or noise. Express in speech. Be verbose. Convert into a verb. Articulate, either verbally or with a cry, shout, or noise. Give verbal or other expression to one's feelings. Give verbal or other expression to one's feelings. A favorite saying of a sect or political group. A manner of speaking that is distinctive of a particular group of people.
Become our student and get access to effective and free educational materials. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to become a part of our growing YouTube community and to learn English effectively.